Okay. And welcome. Hello, this is Kathy Frey from IMCO, the International Integrated Maternity Healthcare Organisation, and welcome along to this week's Maternity Natural Health webinar. And today we've got a real favourite obstetrician friend of ours, and that is Ricardo Jones. Dr. Jones, say hello.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it is great to have you here. Rick has spoken before with us with our last symposium, and in fact, Rick was virtually about to hop on a plane and come to New Zealand for a conference when COVID first struck in the world. So, and I noticed that we're still dealing with it now. Which I think took everybody from surprise a bit. But look, it's really great to have you here today. For those of you who are not familiar with our setup here, if you would like to go into the chat section and put in your location and your profession as a health professional, or maybe you're a mum expecting a baby, we'd love to know whereabouts you are in the world. Also, usually down the bottom of the screen, there is a place there for Q&A. So if you've got any questions for Dr. Rick, please just put them down there and we'll absolutely make sure that they get discussed. So today's topic is, one that I think is very close to the hearts of a lot of us here at IMCO. We're our whole thing is perinatal integrative medicine. So, that maternity specialization within integrative healthcare, which is always holistically minded. And, Rick Jones is quite a rebel, we would say, in his home country of Brazil, and which is renowned to have a lot of very medicalized obstetric care. And he'll tell you more about his background. But he's been a holistic advocate of obstetric care, I guess, for his entire career, and had a team with his wife, who is a midwife, and a doula. So the three of them have looked after thousands of women. And Rick is also a speaker and prolific writer. Additionally, he is proudly a member of the left-wing Labour Party and the PCO, Workers' Cause Party, and he's also a board member of the humanitization of childbirth education. He's a humanistic person, anti-racist, pro-choice, penal abolitionist, pro-diversity, ecologist, and anti-war. And so welcome, Rick. We're going to talk about such a fascinating topic, and it's really quite cutting edge and also very old topic, and that is, what obstetrics and gynecology should mean in our society and how it needs to change. So welcome, Rick. Tell the audience more about yourself.
Well, thank you for inviting me again. This is one of the sad part of this story is that I was packing with my wife to go to New Zealand last year. And because of, I think, 24 hours, less than that.
Yeah.
The COVID thing just went down and everything was closed. My flight was closed. My friend in New Zealand was talking to me on WhatsApp, and we were dealing with the places I would stay. I was going to stay 15 days in New Zealand, then I was going to the United States to visit my friend Robbie, and everything collapsed in just a few hours. So I still have, the dream to visit New Zealand, because New Zealand is where things happen first. Every time something is going to happen in Brazil, we say in New Zealand, that just happened a few hours ago, because you were ahead of us in the time. But things in Brazil are, as in every part of the world, we're dealing with the pandemic, and we have a lot of discussion about this this specific issue of people dying. We have 600,000 people that died from COVID. And we have this really denialist politician here in Brazil. The president Bolsonaro is known in the rest of the world to be a fascist president. We have a lot of problem with this kind of thing here, but we're doing the best we can. The health professionals are doing their best, but anyway, we're still having a lot of problems with that. Related to births in Brazil, I'm not assisting births anymore. I'm just giving talks, and I came back to study again. I'm studying anthropology in the local university, and I'm giving courses in obstetrics and homeopathy, now online, not presential, not physically. But anyway, we're having the discussion that our group called Reúna, a humanization of childbirth network that controls our ideas around the country. We're still discussing the issues of humanization of childbirth, and we have been doing that for more than 20 years. In fact, 27 years from now, working together to bring more alternatives to women during childbirth.
So fantastic. I missed sort of actually pointing out the fact in that introduction of you is that you are a very senior homeopath with obstetrics as well. And, you know, I would go so far as to say that you are potentially the world's leading homeopathic obstetrician. Not a lot of you around, not at your level of knowledge particularly. So, you know, you have integrated you know, complementary and alternative therapies within your obstetric practice as a routine part of everyday way that you've worked. You know, that's always been you. So it's great to have you have that, you know, to have you here on that perspective. So, but, you know, tell us more about why did you even decide to be an obstetrician?
Well, we never know exactly what makes us take some decisions during our lives. I used to say that I have this pivotal moment when I was 15 years old, and my father was in France. He was studying in France, and my mother decided to join him there to spend a month. And to go to Paris was the dream of her life. She always wanted to know this magical city. She was a woman that was born in the 30s. She saw movies, actors, you know, people talking about the city light, the Paris. And so when I was 15 years old, she decided to visit France for the first time, because we were low middle class in Brazil. No one in the 70s could afford to go to Europe, to visit Europe. And when she was in the airport and she waved at me in the airplane, I said, I'm going to be a doctor. So I think that a psychoanalyst could, you know, understand that, but I remember being in the airport and said, I'm going to be a doctor. But when I was in medical school, I decided to be, first I decided to be a clinician, and then I decided to be a pediatrician. But then I discovered that I didn't want to be a pediatrician. I wanted to be a father. It's different. It's completely different. So I decided to be a father. I was a father at the age of 21 years old. I was a child. I was a father. I have my son is almost 40 now. And so I had a passion for babies, but not the other people babies. I wanted to have my own babies. And then I went to a hospital. I was working as a student because I was a father of a young boy and a poor guy. I had to, you know, earn to get money from my family. And I decided to work in a small hospital near my city. And then for the first time, I saw births. And the impact that births have in me was tremendous. For the first time I saw a baby being born, I remember the name of the baby. It was the same name of my father by coincidence, Morris or Mauricio. And then I saw this baby coming and alive and moving. And I said, This is absolutely fantastic. It has nothing to do with orthopedics or pediatrics or surgery. No, it's another human being coming from a human being. And that is, my mind twisted. And I said, no, this is fantastic. This is absolutely fantastic. And from that time on, I dedicate myself to understand what was a miracle to me. Of course, I didn't understand. I cannot understand birth. Birth is beyond my capacity to understand. But I tried to understand what was happening there, women having babies and etc. And I had a very common and normal and education in medical school. When I applied for residency in gynecology and obstetrics at the end of my medical period, my graduation, after my graduation, my second child was born, Bebel. And she was born in the last shift that I had as a student. I graduated 15 days after that. And my wife was already a nurse. And then I came to my graduation with my son and my daughter that was 15 days old in the graduation as a medical doctor. And then I entered the residency. But in the residency, I saw what was obstetric violence, because I noticed that the way we treat women during childbirth has to do with her political position in society. So we were treating women in a way that diminishes her when compared to men. And I have very strong images of women in my life. My mother was...
What sort of year are we talking about at that stage?
Talking about the beginnings of the 80s. I began my residency in 1985.
Yeah, okay, so beginning of the 80s. I mean, you know, if we look back in the births in the 50s and the 60s, well, clearly, you know, the obstetrician was God, and the woman did what they were told. And then, you know, there was quite a bit of rebellion sort of started to come in the 70s, you know, and partners were starting to be, you know, allowed into the room and that sort of thing. But, you know, I mean, we still see things handled in a way these days that, you know, sometimes you just know, boy, that should have been done differently. But you obviously, you know, for you to have that really marked impression on you as a young doctor and in the 80s thinking this is just wrong.
Yes, that was my attitude. I was watching and witnessing women giving birth, and I said, no, this is wrong. Why are women in this position to have a baby if they can squat, for instance? If they can choose the position they want? Why are we giving so many medicines for a physiological event in a woman's life? Why so many drugs? Why are we drugging these women? Why are we setting her apart from her family? Because these women trust their family much more than trust me. So why are we taking them apart from the family? So everything I saw, no, this is wrong. This is wrong.
That must have been so challenging for you in that you were only a young doctor at the time. You know, you can't go in and tell these older, more senior doctors that they're doing things wrong, even though in your heart you can see that it's not right.
No, they simply could not understand.
Yeah. So
I was... You know Cervantes, the Spanish writer Cervantes. He wrote about Don Quixote. I was Don Quixote. I was the guy that was there seeing, you know, all this madness of treating women like, you know, stupid people. And I said, this is wrong. And everybody look at me and say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Just so normal.
You're crazy. This is progress. This is technology. We're treating these women. These women would die a few years ago. We're gods. We are the saviors. We're the heroes of the hospital. We're saving mothers and babies. Are you crazy? And I said, well, I think that we still can save women and babies, but we should not treat every single woman as if her body has a defect.
Right.
Or if
So
her body is wrong.
So within your journey, at what stage were you at that point where you could sort of leave the hospital system, I guess, and be able to start to go out and do things your way?
I left the residency and began to work in two hospitals, two public hospitals. In one of these hospitals, there were just 3 doctors working there. It's a small military hospital. And I decided to create a system there, a very simple system, to decrease cesarean section rate. At that time, cesarean section rate in Brazil was around 40%. Now it's 56%. It was 40%. And I said, we can do something to decrease the cesarean section rate. And it's very simple. Every single woman was taught how to do a squatting birth. We created a specific chair to where the woman could sit and have a baby in squatting position. The second thing is, every time a doctor decides for cesarean section, indicates a cesarean section, he needs to call the other doctor and say, let me explain you what's going on in here.
Wow.
And you know, the
So
simple fact,
basically a C-section needed 2 doctors' approval.
yes. So the
Right.
simple idea that you need to explain for your peer
Yes.
that why you're doing a cesarean section diminishes, you know, the rate of cesarean section. Well, in 2 months, we went from 42 to 19% cesarean sections. Just
Wow.
talking, one doctor talking to each other and respecting women's wishes. It was fantastic because I noticed we can do that in a broader scale. We can do that in a huge hospital.
Yeah,
well,
that's not a challenging thing to implement.
No,
It's to just say it always needs 2 to sign it off, even if it's just a phone consultation. I think that's absolutely fascinating that you know, such a very simple procedure had such a huge impact, not just from the perspective that how can I put it, that some doctors are a little bit too scalpel ready, but also from the perspective that if they are sitting on the fence, you know, if they genuinely are sitting on the fence and jeepers, you know, I've got this and this going on, you know, should I be, you know, is it really a, you know, because often we work in those areas of grey, don't we? I mean, there are times with childbirth where the decision on how to is best to manage that is absolutely black and white, but most of the time it's in grey. And you know, so even just that moment to give them the confidence to say, well, hold on, let's wait another half an hour, let's just do this and that. Oh, look, heck, now we can see head and we've got a baby. You know, having that ability, I think that so often, I know when, you know, looking at the hospital system when I've been working in there, particularly through the middle of the night, often you've got a situation where there's just one obstetrician who's making those ultimate decisions, and he can ring his boss or her boss, but you know, that is waking them up. So it better be a really good reason to be ringing them. And I think they do find themselves in those awkward situations of going, jeepers, you know, I don't want to push the envelope too far here. I'm just going to call it and it's going to be a C-section. And if it was just a policy that they always bounced it off somebody else, amazing. What a little subtle decision makes such a huge impact. Yes. So how is childbirth these days in Brazil and, well, Latin America in general? I mean, I know you talked about it's now 56%. What's your out of interest, would you know what's the primate C-section rate like?
Primary.
The primate, so first birth.
First, I don't have the
Don't have
data
a
here,
split of that.
but 56% is the national rate now. The thing is, yes, this is ridiculous. It's beyond any justification. But the thing is, many years ago in the 90s, when I joined Reúna, the humanization of childbirth network in Brazil, the discussion in Brazil was at that time, what can we do? And the idea was to teach doctors the principles, the ideas, the strategies to decrease cesarean sections in Brazil. So we had a group of notables, important obstetricians from Brazil, from the WHO, from the Ministry of Health in Brazil, going from city to city, meeting doctors and explaining them the principles of humanization of childbirth, explaining them how and why natural childbirth is much better, why we should avoid the risks of cesarean sections and the costs and the techniques and the squatting position and not to do episiotomies. And in the middle of and what happened after that is that nothing changed. Zero changed. Nothing. And in the beginning of this century, again, doctors in Brazil decided to do a program called Better Birth, adequate birth, parto adequado, adequate birth, meaning that they are going to make some new protocols, not to do cesarean sections without the real indication before 39 weeks. And every woman should go to the hospital and sign papers, and the baby should have a, ultrasound and blah, blah, blah. And what happened this time is when a bunch of hospitals, huge hospitals, great hospitals with private medicine in Brazil, doing that, we decreased cesarean section by 1%.
No, I'm sorry.
Nothing.
It is feeling laughable.
And my question is, why we did it again, and why the decrease was 1%? And people say, okay, but it's 10,000 births less, 10,000 cesarean sections less than 2 years ago. And I say, yes, that's good. I am happy for these 10,000 women that didn't do cesarean sections and had a vaginal birth. But the problem is we are 56%. Even if we continue losing, it will take, 20, 30 years for we have a reasonable cesarean section rate. And for me, unfortunately, the answer is not in teaching doctors. Mm-hmm. This is a failed alternative. We failed. And that's why I'm a radical. That's why I'm a communist. I'm a radical. I think that the idea that we have a century ago to put birth in the hands of doctors failed. It doesn't work. It's the worst decision we could do in the realm of birth. And, in medicine, doctors are not able to assist normal birth because they don't want and they don't know how to do that.
I think, particularly when you say that, they don't know. And, that's the thing, is that when you are spending time, your entire career in the hospital system, it is you can understand how there can be a cynicism towards the fact that it can go normally, and I remember sort of saying, I think it would be so worthwhile if part of maintaining obstetric qualifications is that, for example, you know, I don't know, for 1 month every 3 years or whatever, they must work in a primary care setting, and just get back to the fact, you're to a place where it's midwifery led, there's no theatres, there's no epidurals, and just to remind themselves and reinvigorate that belief that, you know, most births are normal, you know, and when we don't fiddle. One of the things that there certainly seems to be a pattern of around the world is where obstetrics is privatized. So, you know, when it's the woman's insurance that is paying for the her obstetrician, and so that obstetrician has got an option, if he's a little bit on the fence about doing a C-section or not, you know, one option is to book that elective C-section during normal working hours, and earn more money, or be up potentially all night, overnight, routinely through the week, for an unknown arrival time of a baby of a natural labor, and earn less. So I've always sort of said, look, the day that private obstetricians earn more from natural labor than a C-section will be the day that we'll see more natural labors in countries where it is privatized. In welfare, in socialized countries where there is a welfare system, and basically all citizens can go and have free maternity health care, and the doctors are being paid by the hospital rather than being paid by insurance, we seem to see, you know, lower rates, which makes sense. So, you know, do you think that it is that privatization of the insurance funding of it that is why this has happened in Brazil?
No, that's not the only reason, but let me tell you, my point of view is that privatization of healthcare is a tragedy all over the world. Is a tragedy. And COVID proved us that every single country that has a universal healthcare system went better than the United States, for instance. Well, people are dying because they can't go to a hospital. So in childbirth care, in Brazil, we have two great groups: public sector, private sector. The C-section rate in public sector is huge. It's 42%. 42%, and 70% of the patients. 42%. But the cesarean section in the private sector is 90%. 90%. This is ridiculous.
So you would imagine that if it's 90% C-section rate in privatized care, which is just diabolical, but you would have to almost guess that the 10% that are, you know, vaginal births, so almost accidentally vaginal births, because they couldn't quite get to them in time to turn it into a more expensive C-section. That's horrendous. Goodness me.
The joke that I used to tell is, you were in a shopping mall, okay? It's the temple of middle class. And you see a woman with carrinho de bebê, the thing that you carry the baby.
Oh, the pram?
You push the baby.
Yes.
Yes. And then I asked for the woman, where was your C-section? And she said, how do you know I had a C-section? And I said, you were a middle-class woman. You're in the shopping mall. You're young. You have 90% chance of having a cesarean section. And the joke is, one of the women said to me, no, I didn't have a C-section. I had a vaginal birth. And I said, where? You were my doctor. That's why I had a vaginal birth. Because just a few doctors accept the risks of assisting vaginal births in Brazil in private sector. because the push to do cesarean sections is very, very high, and there is no penalty. There is no accountability. For instance, there is a lot of doctors in my city that they do only cesarean sections, 100 cesarean section rate, and there is no accountability. Nobody calls them, not the news, not the medical board, saying, how come you only do cesarean sections? Because he can say, I do whatever I want with my patients. They accepted that, so I can do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the system is wrong. We should get rid of medical doctors or obstetricians assisting normal birth. Doctors should be the heroes of the obstetric ward. They should be the guys that are called when an emergency occurs, when the woman has diabetes or preeclampsia. This is the role of the doctors, and not to assist normal birth. And the thing is, try to understand, Kathy, when a guy goes to medical school, what is the drive to go to medical school? You want to intervene. You want to do cesareans. You want to do surgeries. You want to do brain surgery. You want to give drugs for people that are sick. You want to intervene because medicine has this masculine, this phallic drive to intervene, to penetrate. And midwifery is the opposite, is to accommodate, is to respect physiology, is to understand the importance of the proper time for things to happen. So how come we decide that doctors should assist a physiological event? And so a guy is taught during medical school to intervene in situations like, a car wreck or things like that. And then you say, no, now that you graduated, now that you are an obstetrician, you're going to do nothing. Just watch. And then the guy says, no, that's not the reason I went to medical school. I want to do something. So it's a different mindset. Doctors have a different mindset than midwives, and midwives are the adequate professionals. And that's why educate doctors will lead to nothing. Nothing. This failed. We should not educate doctors. We need to change doctors. There are better professionals to assist normal birth, and these better professionals are midwives.
Within that, it's so amazing to hear you talk this way. Within that whole birth practitioner circle, we have doulas, we have midwives, we have obstetricians. So I mean, and you've always worked in that team of three because you've seen, that there is unique value that each of those three roles brings, and there obviously is quite a bit around the world of almost like career jealousy or unsure. There's not, there's a lot of birth practitioners who don't welcome all three of those roles to be part and to bring value. So I think it would be really great to hear your opinion on those three. So, what's your opinion on doulas, and the future of midwifery and the future of obstetrics? I'd love you to go through those three because your whole career has been using those three. And give us your perspective on those.
I think that we began here in Brazil in the year 2001, the idea of doulas in the country. There was no doulas, at least working with this name. There were some women helping doctors around the country, but they were not called doulas, they were called something like that. So we brought here in Brazil, Robbie Davis-Floyd and Deborah Pascali Bonaro to do the first class, the first training, doula training in the country in 2002, 20 years ago. And from that time on, I began to work with doulas, always with doulas. Always in my birth, I have a doula at home and in the hospital for 20 years. And the difference is dramatic. You know, when we see a birth, when a doula is preparing the woman and giving her comfort and massage and things like that, it's completely different. And I work with a midwife, but the thing is that we brought up a team of a doula, a midwife, and an obstetrician. And at the end of my career, all the things that I did was to be the guy that opens the door in the hospital, because they could not go alone to the hospital. I should be present at the hospital. But when we assist home birth, doulas and midwives do the whole thing. The whole work was doulas and midwives. And I was there just as a guy to confirm that everything was okay. So the midwife talked to me and says, what do you think about that? No, it's okay. Let's wait. Okay, I agree. Okay, it's 5 centimeters. That's okay. Well, let's go to the hospital now. I was that guy. In the hospital, the same. Doulas and midwives were doing the whole work, and I was there sitting, waiting. I think that in the future, my presence was becoming, unimportant, because I was, just the guy that was there, and the guy that was helping them to take decisions. But in the future, I think that doulas and midwives are going to have, their role in the culture as the primary caregivers for childbirth. And the thing that
in some countries they already are.
Yes.
So
yes, they already are.
Like you've said, New Zealand, and England, Canada, yeah. So basically, so long as the woman is normal, then that is looked after by a midwife. And then if and when things become abnormal or high risk, that's when the midwife will consult with her obstetric colleague, because of course it's seen that the obstetric colleague is the specialist in pathology. And of course Holland, we can't miss them out as well. And so there is happening in places, but not every. I think there was like with doulas are not always as popular everywhere. Often there's sort of where it's midwifery led, there's less doulas. And I think that maybe that was, the doulas was sort of part of that way of helping women to sort of protect themselves against the system. It was sort of another layer that came in there. But so I guess if you were to sort of like, separate them out and say, this is the role of the doula, this is the role of the midwife, this is the role of the obstetrician, how would you, and because you've worked in that way, which is so beautiful, how would you kind of summarize that?
I never had this kind of problem like the doula protecting the woman from the system, because I was there to protect her from the system. I can understand.
But you are rare.
Yes. But I'm rare. I know. I am bizarre doctor. I was completely different from all the other doctors. I was against the machine. I was the rage against the machine. I was against the medical system. I was critical to that. I know I had a very even aggressive attitude against the hospital and the protocols and the routines that are dehumanizing women, pregnant women and women in labor. But I think that in some situations, doulas have this role of protecting women from the system. I normally used to say to them, do that before birth, protect them before birth. When you are in the hospital or at home, don't try to, put these concepts in the pregnant women's mind, because this is not the proper moment to do that. The thing is that we work in a very good harmony between the three of us. Of course, it was always me, the midwife, and some doula. I worked with many doulas. But the thing is, we always had this attitude of respecting the other's role during childbirth. I have never heard a doula saying to me, "Are you sure you need to do a cesarean section? Are you sure?" Because they knew that I was going to do a cesarean section, because that was my, the only chance the woman have, because they trust me. They trust my symphony, my attachment to this idea of giving normal birth to every woman that can have that. So I never had this kind of problem. But sometimes it happened to me, it happened to other doctors in Sao Paulo. It's something really interesting. Try to imagine a birth that is too lengthy. It's a very long labor, and the doctor calls the doula and asks, "What do you think is happening?" Because the doctor trusts the sensibility, the feminine sensibility of the doula. And sometimes doula they say things like, "I think the husband is the problem. Let's go to the kitchen and have some coffee with him, because it's not matching." And sometimes it works, because they're feeling there is something that I didn't feel, because I'm a man, because I'm a doctor. I was thinking about other things, but the doula was really perceptive of, these small details, small things, emotional things that are happening on the background. And that's interesting, because that's the beautiful part of working as a man with women, because they can see things that I can't see, because I'm a doctor and because I'm a man. And so this interconnection between roles and genders is really interesting during childbirth. I remember situations that I said to a patient, she was having, another long labor, and she was crying, and she was kind of, I don't know the word in English. She was moaning all the time. "Oh, I want my baby. I have no passage." Well,
you say complaining?
She was complaining, moaning and complaining all the time. "Oh, I want my baby. I have no passage. I think I have to do a cesarean section. Please, doctor, don't do that to me." Blah, 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 blah. And I remember I said to her, because she's a great friend of mine, "You should not do to anybody things like that." She was a great friend of mine. And I said, "You shut up. Shut up now. You are going to have this baby, and you stop crying. Stop acting like a baby. Don't do that anymore. I'm leaving." And I left the room. She was a home birth. It was a home birth. She was in her home. And I closed the door, and I pretended I was mad. I was not mad, but I was saying, "You're wasting our time and your time, trying to fight against, the things that are going to happen." And then she turned to the midwife and doula and said, "I think he's mad. I think that I should better behave." And I think that 30 minutes later, she had her baby. And she always laughs and says, "Ricardo, you did that to me, and you act like my father." And that was exactly what I was needing. I needed a father figure to say, "Stop doing that. Do what you have to do." And so in this moment, I noticed sometimes, even though birth is a very feminine event, lot of feminine energy, sometimes, only sometimes, the father figure can show in a place like that and say, "Stop all that. Stop. You're not behaving okay. Do what you have to do." Like a father that comes to a girl that is crying and say, "Go now and do your homework. You have to do that right now." And she said, okay, I'll do that. And so, but the thing is, we always respect each other roles. For instance, I never checked twice when the midwife did a vaginal exam. I said, 8 centimeters, it's okay. That's okay. And when the baby was coming, I said, it's your time to do that. You are the midwife. You're going to assist the baby. You're going to catch the baby. And you know what to do. And I taught her because my wife was a pediatric nurse. And so when I began to work with this doula, she said, you know what? This doula is a single woman, beautiful, green eyes. I want to join this team. I don't want to see you leaving the house 4 o'clock in the morning with Christina, the doula, to assist babies in the hospital. I think I need to join you. And so she joined us, and she did, the post-graduation in midwifery as a nurse midwife, and she began to work with us. And so it was always the 3 of us going to hospitals and houses and assisting birth for 20 years. It was the most marvelous time in my life, because we are always together talking and chatting and discussing cases. What did we do wrong? Why didn't she dilate it 100%? Why did we have to do cesarean sections? Why did we say that? Why shouldn't we say that? What was the problem with this father? This father was not helping. It's fantastic. This is really good to work in a team like that.
It just sounds absolutely amazing. Yes. You've had such an incredible career. And so tell us, I mean, maybe let's put some numbers on it. How many births do you estimate the 3
Well,
of you?
I always work as a private doctor. So I didn't do shifts, always as a private doctor.
Right.
Because I decided in the beginning of my career that I was not going to join academy, and I was not going to work as an employee in a hospital, because I wanted to be absolutely free to do something that no one was doing. I was planning to be the doctor that brings another perspective to birth. If I was working in a hospital my entire career, because I worked just 5 or 7 years in the hospitals in the beginning of my career, and then I decided to be a free doctor. So I only worked as a private doctor in hospitals, in private hospitals, and at home, and I assisted around 2,000 births. It's not a big number.
And what was your C-section rate?
Well, depends.
Mm-hmm.
Because during my career as a resident in the hospital, my let me show you something.
Isn't he just the most amazing person to spend your whole career, being prepared to be the rebel, really, and much admiration to Rick.
This is what I used to do when I was a doctor. Every single patient that went this is a chart.
Yes.
This is a chart where I write all my patients from 30 years. So wow. I have all of them here. So I could see how was I behaving related to episiotomies, forceps, cesarean section, and I did it for 30 years, 34 years.
So you would see your own rates of everything.
Yes, I knew
over that time.
Yes, I knew everything. I knew any modification that I had. So in my residency, my cesarean section rate was around 33%, very high. But everybody was high. And then in the first years, it was around 25. For many years, 25.
Yes.
And then I decided to use a set of tools to decrease cesarean section rates. That is no use of episiotomies, don't use of use of squatting position for all patients, etc., etc. No use of drugs, no use of any other procedure. And then my cesarean section dropped to 12, 13. And then at the end of my career, I was around 16%. But the thing is 16, 17, 20, sometimes it was 1 year, 20%. These are, in my opinion, high numbers. It should be much, much less. But the thing
I think
is,
the World Health Organization talks about an ideal of being around 15%.
15, 20. Yes,
yeah,
but
there's not, not many countries that achieve that.
Are able to do that.
Yeah.
But the thing that I say is that birth is a cultural event that happens in the body of a woman. Okay, so
yeah,
I remember when I went to China to teach midwives in China, and I met 2 women from Tibet. Okay, and I asked them, how is your cesarean section rate in your clinic? They had a clinic. No, it's not a clinic. It's a birth center. Okay,
yes.
They have those. Yes, a birth center in Tibet, in Gaza. And I asked, what is your cesarean section rate? And she said, well, our transfer rate is 2 women in 2 years, and we assist 500 women a year. 500 women a year, and they have transferred 1 patient to the hospital that is in the same street. And I said, how is that possible? The thing is, in Tibet, this is possible because the culture is different. It's like if I was in the 16th century, I would have a cesarean section rate of 2%. Because the culture is different, the mindset is different. And today, women fear birth. And women in Tibet, they don't fear birth. It's normal, it's natural. So that's the thing. And what I say is that I do 16% cesarean section rate in a community where middle-class women have 90%. So that's a huge,
it's a huge impact on that culture of that.
Yes.
Of what's
yes,
normal.
Because I decrease
yes.
the chance of having a cesarean from 90 to 16. This is a huge achievement.
So we are going to be soon to run out of time. But just let me have a little, somebody had asked if you have a picture of the squatting chair that you had designed. I don't know if that is handy perhaps or not, but if not, for those that are watching the webinar live, they will receive an automated email tomorrow where we will put in your contact details, etc. And so you'll be able to ask Rick about that directly. Now we've got another sort of comment in here from a lady, Barbara, Rick. And so my thought for reducing C-section is for women to go back to having babies in their 20s when there's less medical problems, i.e. the culture needs to change on that one. But is that even possible? I'm wondering if COVID will encourage women to settle down and not to overseas travel and have their babies at a younger age. That's so tricky, isn't it? Because gone are the days of leaving school at 15 or 16, and by the time you're in your early 20s, you've already been working for, half a dozen years, and you've perhaps, got money together to get going on buying a house and things. And now, of course, most of the millennials are now Zoomers, at school right through to 17 or 18, then they're at university into their early 20s. Now they're coming out of university with a debt that's going to take them the next 5 years to pay off. And, suddenly they're kind of stereotypically get to the late 20s and go, I'm finally debt free. Now I need to save for a house. You know, and suddenly it's early 30s, and that they can be able to do something that was, you know, financially they're sort of a decade behind, aren't they? But what's your thoughts about age relating to C-section rates? What the answer to that one is?
Well, age related to sex in Brazil, for instance, the more old you are, the higher the chance you get a cesarean section, because it's called the there is a name for that. It's called the
well, the advanced maternal age is a common.
no, the baby that is born from a node woman, like 38, 39. We have a name for that. It's the baby whatever. It's you know it's the last one. She will have no time for another baby. It's the only one, so you need to take care. So the chance to have a cesarean section in this kind of babies is in Brazil 95, 90, 96%.
Yeah.
But the thing about age is that sometimes in my office, women came to my office with 39 years old saying, "Doctor, I came here because I want to have a baby." And I mentally say, thanks God you decided. You were 39 years old and now you're deciding to have a baby. And then she adds, yes, but not now, in 2 years. And I said, what are you talking about? Do you think your ovaries are forever? Don't you understand? There is a time limit for having a baby. And now it's so interesting that women are having their babies in the late 30s, not late 20s, late 30s, 35, 36, 37, the first baby. And I said, no, this is, but I think that in the future, we are going to reverse that. And you're right. Women put a lot of excuses for not having babies. Oh, I have to study, then I have my master's, then I have my doctorate, then I have to get money because I've been studying the whole life. I'm 30 something, and now I graduated and I have a name. I'm teaching, but I don't have money. I need to buy a house, or I need to find the guy that wants to marry me. That sometimes it's difficult. And then she's 30 something, and then she said, no, we're going to settle and we're going to have fun. We're going to travel. And then she's 37, 38, and she doesn't have a baby. And it's not normal in our species. It's not normal in our species to have babies with that age. That's new in our species, to have the first baby at that age.
Yeah,
I know people that have.
And very new. We're talking, I mean, only really the last, 40, 50, 60 years, half a century, after millions of years, it's only in this last half a century that huge change has.
Yes, and I saw this change. I saw this change because in my time, women have their babies when they're from 20 to 30. It's normally 25, 26, 27. And now it's really difficult to see a woman having her first pregnancy before 30 years old, 30 years of age. And it's rare.
It's funny because, I had my babies in the early 30s, and I look at my children and who are young adults, and I would encourage them to be having them in their mid to late 20s. I just kind of think that's a really great time. But there is definitely a sort of cultural misunderstanding, isn't there, that you can just keep pushing that envelope and science will get you a baby in the end. But look, we are needing to wind up. So I know that you've just put into the chat there your email address, Rick, which is great, but it's basically ricardoherbertjones@gmail.com. But look, it's just so wonderful to see your face again and to catch up and to have you spread your fantastic messages. Is there anything that you want to close with, Rick?
No, I just want to say that I'm really happy that you invited me to give to have this conversation. I'm still in love with New Zealand, and I promise that someday I will try to visit. I have a great friend there, Larissa. She's a midwife that works in I think it's Auckland, and I would really love to visit New Zealand. And my wife really wanted to see the Hobbit village, and we made plans.
Go to Hobbiton.
It was we made plans. We wanted to visit
We
all
did.
these beautiful
We made
things.
amazing plans, and you were going to be sitting on a deck with us. That we would and
remember,
yeah,
we made arrangements to go to her house, and who was going to cook every day that we were there. We had plans about that.
It was a shocking thing that none of the world saw coming, did we? But we'll get there in the end. The bubbles will open up again.
But I want to say that you can count on me whenever you need me. If you want to have a conversation, an open conversation like that, for me it's really fun. I like that. I am a conversationalist. I love to talk. I love to exchange ideas and to exchange perspective and points of view. And this specific issue, birth, is so fantastic because we can spend days and days and days and talking about that. And it's always fun. It's always interesting. We always learn something new.
And you always bring, Rick, just such a fantastic, genuine, different slant on things, which is so wonderful to embrace. So wonderful. And I know that you're great friends with us here at IMCO, and I know you love us, and we sure as heck love you. And so we need to wind it up. And someone's saying email not showing in the chat. Okay, hold on a second, people. I'll just send that through to everyone. There we go. You should see that now. So Ricardo, RICARDO, Herbert Jones @gmail.com. So thank you so much, Rick, for being here today, and thank you for all of you who came in live. And we know there's a lot of people who'll be watching the webinar afterwards as well in their free time. And thank you to all. And we just wish everybody a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you, Rick. Bye, everybody.
Bye.